Welcome back to our Introduction to JavaScript on Codecademy. This is built-in objects. It says, in addition to console, there are other objects built into JavaScript down the line. You'll build your own objects, but for now these built-in objects are full of user functionality. For example, if you wanted to perform more complex mathematical operations than arithmetic, JavaScript has the built-in math object. The great thing about objects is that they have methods. Let's call the .random method from the built-in math object. Here we have console log, math.random, prints a random number between 0 and 1. In the example above, we called the random method by appending the object name with the dot operator, the name of the method, and opening and closing parentheses. This method returns a random number between 0 inclusive and 1 exclusive. To generate a random number between 0 and 50, we could multiply this result by 50 like so. Math.random, then times 50. The example above will likely evaluate to a decimal. To ensure the answer is a whole number, we can take advantage of another useful math method called math.floor. Math.floor takes a decimal number and rounds down to the nearest whole number. You can use math.floor to round down a random number like this. Math.floor takes in math.random times 50. In this case, 1. Math.random generates a random number between 0 and 1. We then multiply that number by 50. So now we have a number between 0 and 50. Then math.floor rounds the number down to the nearest whole number. If you wanted to see the number printed to the terminal, you would still need to use console.log statement. And this is the example. Console.log, then you got math.floor, and then whatever math.random times 50 would be. And that would print a random whole number between 0 and 50. To see all properties and methods on the math object, you can look at the documentation here, and here's our instructions. Inside a console log, create a random number with math.random, then multiply it by 100. So we would do our console.log. Inside of it, we're going to do math.random. And let's zoom out a bit. Then multiply it by 100. So similar to what they did here, math random, we're going to multiply whatever the answer is, but we want it times 100. See, because it says multiply by 100. And it doesn't say to use the floor. That's going to be in part 2 here. But let's just see what this gives us. This should give us a random number between 1 and 100. We get 41.40. We did pass that. Now we're going to use math.floor to make the output a whole number. So here we can do math.floor, and we want parentheses around here, and then all the way around out here. And that should give us again number between 1 and 100, and then floor it. So let's run this, and it did give us 99, and we did pass. Then third, it says find a method on the JavaScript math object that returns the smallest integer greater than or equal to a decimal number. Use this method with the number 43.8, log the answer to the console. So here we would look at documentation, open this in a new tab, and we're going to look for an object that returns the smallest integer greater than or equal to a decimal number. Let's go over here. We type smallest, math.ceil returns the smallest integer greater than or equal to x. So let's go back here. Return smallest integer greater than or equal to a decimal number. smallest integer greater than or equal to number. So we could do a different console.log. We want to use that method, which was math.ceil, math.ceil, and we do 43.8. Let's run that. So it does give us 44. It did return the smallest integer greater than or equal to 43.8. It did return 44, which makes sense. Then 4, use the JavaScript documentation to find a method on a built-in number object that checks if a number is an integer. So same thing, we're going to do console.log, and we're looking for a method that we will be able to use to check if 2017 is a number. So this will probably be an argument given. We just need to find, what would it be? It'd be like math dot something that takes in 2017. So let's see. We see checks if number is an integer. We want something like checks if number, right here, determines whether the past value is an integer. Number is integer. Number dot is integer. So number math dot, or so it wasn't math, it was number dot is integer. And this should return true. It did return true. We did pass that. So we learned a few different things here. Kind of just taking in some of the stuff we've been learning. We were able to create a random number using Math.random. Math.random allowed us to do a number between 0 and 1. We then multiply it by 100 to give us a number between 1 and 100, or 0 and 100. And we do that again using Math.random, then multiplying times the number of numbers we want to go in between. We learned Math.floor. Since Math.random will usually give us a decimal, Math.floor is going to make the output a whole number. So whatever decimal, it's just going to floor it, and it will make the output a whole number. So it's not a decimal. Then we find the method on the math object, which returns smallest integer, and that was our ceil, which returned the smallest integer greater than or equal to a decimal number. That was 44. And then fourth, we looked at JavaScript documentation and we found the isInteger method on the number object, which told us if the value we passed in was a number or not, or isInteger. We passed in 2017 and it did return true. If you guys are getting that, you guys are getting this lesson, and I'll see you on the next one.